this show so far feels like a nice, comfy pair of slippers. It's got so many little aspects of Peter Pan, Goonies, that adventure kind of thing. I think in this, there's a note I make about one of the characters. It feels like I've watched it before, but it's also very new to kind of, and I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. I must admit, when I started watching it and I saw the planet that it landed on, part of me actually thought, oh, is this a time travel thing? I wonder then maybe they will do. Is it going to be one of these where they're going to have to jump from planet to planet to try find the coordinates to be able to get back home? Is that going to be the next 4 episodes of that going to be visiting the other planets to then get back to where they need to be?
And we're here for another episode of the Skeleton Crew discussion show. This is episode 4. Can't say I remember. No, Attin. Maybe the impression of that will come out a bit later. But I am joined by Maff this week. And if this is your first time tuning into the show, I have a different guest on each week, speaking about each episode of Skeleton Crew. So the first 2, the premiere was with Thomas Rochester. Last week was Spider-Dan the Secret Boars. And this week is one of my co-hosts of Clone Wars Conversations. Along with Dave, I have got Maff joining me. Maff, how are you doing, and how have you found Skeleton Crew so far before this episode?
Thanks for having me on.
Good. I only spoke to you 2 days ago, but it's yes. Conversations, but still.
It's great because it's like back when we were younger, Christmas was Star Wars. Star Wars always on at Christmas time. So, obviously you forced me into watching Rebels and Clone Wars, which
twisted your arm.
Thank you for. But yeah, this came along. I don't know. Some of the Star Wars shows have been a bit hit and miss.
Yeah.
Obviously, Andor, amazing. Ahsoka, not too bad. I think if I go back and watch it after we finish Clone Wars, it'll hit a lot better.
Yeah.
Mando, again, some are good, some are bad. Boba Fett, yeah.
And then there's Kenobi as well.
Yeah, Kenobi was good, but again, I think that was kind of Easter eggy kind of that. I think one of you guests said this, I think, the other week. I'd forgotten what this were going to be. I was thinking this were going to be the Starfighter kind of.
Oh, the Rogue Squadron.
Rogue Squadron, that's it.
Yeah.
And that, so I wasn't quite sure, but then obviously people start saying Goonies in space. Now, I think it's a bit of a disservice to kind of call it that. I was thinking, this show so far feels like a nice, comfy pair of slippers.
Yeah.
It's got so many little aspects of Peter Pan, Goonies, that adventure kind of thing. I think in this, there's a note I make about one of the characters. It feels like I've watched it before, but it's also very new to kind of, and I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. I don't feel at the end of any of the episodes like, oh, that's a bit crap, that. I mean, Acolyte had moments that were quite good, but overall you felt a little bit let down.
Yeah.
Whereas I think as well, there's no real force. Well, there's a force user, but they've not really done an awful lot with him.
He's not the central part of the story. It's not all force related.
Yeah, which I think that's good because we briefly mentioned like the games, Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order are really good. Outlaws, it's interesting, but it don't quite hit. There's something missing.
Yeah.
And I was worried about this, thinking, is this going to be one of those because it doesn't have the force? To be fair, less of the force is better because you're seeing more of the world or more of the planets, universe, whatever you want to call it. But again, there's something there that's like nostalgic to me, and that. So I'm enjoying where it's going. I can't wait for next week. I am a bit worried because you did mention to me and Dave the other day that one of the episodes is only 17 minutes long.
Yeah. It's been the runtime.
I was worried it was going to be this week. I thought, oh God, there'll be no to talk about.
Yeah, because my only suspicion is that the 17-minute episode is going to be a flashback episode for Jod Narnarwood or Crimson Jack or Sylvia or whatever he's called. Like Jod, basically Jude Law. Like that's what I think it's going to be. I think it's just going to be a really intense, really fast-paced kind of one like that. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this goes, but I like this show where the anticipation is like, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing next week. Not being like chomping at the bit for it in the sense of like, oh, I need to watch it, because I wasn't even like that with Andor necessarily until certain points. But I was like, with Andor, I was like, oh, I'm really looking forward to the next week. Whereas with Acolyte, I was like, something incredible is going to happen next week. And then it didn't quite land. And I feel like that's happened. I think that happened with Book of Boba Fett for a lot of people. We oh my God, this is going to be like Mandalorian, but like without Grogu. So he's going to be even more badass and like really off the rails. Like what we've seen in Boba Fett in the canon Legends is really intense. And then you watch him and it's like, this is basically Boba Fett's retiree years, where he's just like, I'm just going to go for a stroll in the Sandlands and stop all the violence and make a bit of money for myself. And it's like, oh, but that's not really what I wanted from Boba Fett. I wanted him to be like the Mandalorian is, and you've kind of already made a Boba Fett-like character after Return of the Jedi and made him look almost identical, but he's got his own thing. So that was my thing with Boba Fett, but with this, it's completely different.
I think as well, I think they've nailed it with the actors.
100%.
I mean, again, Jude Law's probably, you could argue Jude Law's the biggest name there.
He is.
And I think the one who's probably closest is Nick Frost, really. But again, it's not quite the same. But like you say, he's a bit of a background character at the moment. It's the kids that are really leading it, and because you feel concerned for the kids, but you're also quite invested in them. That's what's kind of making it. I mean, there's bits in the episode today where he kind of, the one that he thinks normally a bit of a dick, actually, there's a nice side to him. But last week's one where when they were going to go see that owl lady, and there's that nice shot where they're kind of going along and you see the moon in the background, and John kind of says, "Oh, we're just got to be careful because she might backstab us," and they're like, "What does that mean?" And you think, yeah, kids probably don't, especially from where they've grown up. There's no war, there's none of that. They don't understand any of that. So you then do realise that, yeah, there still is a bunch of kids and that. So again, you are invested. You are kind of thinking, I do want to see him get home. I do want to see, but as I said, I'm just, is it the best Star Wars thing? No. But it's very enjoyable, and I want to see what next week is. And it doesn't seem to kind of end on that cliffhanger thing of, oh my gosh. That it ends where you want to see what comes next, but it's not like, oh, there's peril as such. Where I thought they were going to finish this week's, it doesn't. It kind of concludes what you were doing, which is good, instead of it kind of leaving that big, oh no, we'll end on a knife edge.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's. I thought the same thing when Smee was SM33 when he went kind of bad. I was like, is this where they're going to end it? And then not. But yeah, I feel like with this show, I think this is going to be the kind of Star Wars project that if someone said to me, like, I want to get my kid into Star Wars, what should I show them? And I'd be like, well, if they're really young, probably Young Jedi Adventures. But if they're a bit older, if they're like probably 7 onwards, I'd say is probably. And they said, what kind of Star Wars? I'd be like, well, love the original trilogy. Don't get me wrong. But it is a bit slow and it is a bit dated. And some kids wouldn't jam with that. I love the prequels. But I think the political stuff and Jar Jar and stuff is just a lot to take in. So then I go,
kids all love Jar Jar.
A lot of kids do, not all of them. But it also, there's so much talking in it. And the first part of the film, there's no action for quite a while. There's a little bit of the lightsabers. There's like a few seconds of it. And then after that, it just takes quite a while to really get going, and you got a lot of Gungan talking and stuff. But then I think The Force Awakens, the way that starts with Rey is probably the most capsulating for a younger audience, and it's got the action scene with Poe and Finn and stuff, so it's got that. But again, it's quite mature. I think that would be more almost to introduce a kid properly to Star Wars, depending on the kid, probably near a 10 for something like The Force Awakens to really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, Skeleton Crew though, I think this for pretty much any age kid, like over probably 5 or 6, I think This is just such an easygoing thing because there's no pressure to do with anything else. And what's really clever and beautiful about it is if you showed this to a kid, I imagine the last shot you're going to see is Wim with another Jedi book thingy, but then he's going to have made himself into one of the stories or some little thing like that. But like the Jedi book thing that he's reading, it's like kids in our real life, our universe can see that and maybe they'd go, oh, what's that story? And you could be like, that's the story of Luke Skywalker. Or, you know, because it looks like he's with Rancor and stuff. I know it's Old Republic, so it's not going to be that. But you know what I mean? Like, and I think this is one of the few Star Wars projects, I think Andor's one of them as well, where this works without it being Star Wars, which is why when you add the flavour of Star Wars to it, it makes it better. And that's what I want from a lot of the content.
Audience to start with.
You've got two types of...
to it.
Yeah, you've got two types of Star Wars content. You've got Star Wars content more so for the fans and of Star Wars already, and then you've got more so Star Wars for basically anyone who could get into stuff. The movies try and be anyone, but the prequels I think kind of fail at that. But I think the sequels and originals are quite accessible. I think Mandalorian Series 1 and 2 mostly are in that kind of accessible area, and then I think Andor is completely standalone, and then I think this is completely standalone. But I think you think about Clone Wars and Rebels and any other Star Wars projects we've watched live action, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you don't already have an investment in Star Wars, you're not going to appreciate Ahsoka or Kenobi or anything like that, or Clone Wars. You know, if you force someone to watch Clone Wars, they're not going to enjoy it. But if you were like, come to the cinema...
Especially if you watch the movie.
Well, yeah. But if you like, come to the cinema, watch, you know, Force Awakens with me, or you know, come over mine and we'll watch a few episodes of Skeleton Crew. Even if someone's not into Star Wars, I think they'd go, you know what, this is actually quite fun.
Yeah, I mean, I contemplated watching this with George and that, but I thought, I'm not sure where this is going to lie, because I think it says it's a 6+, and George...
Well, this episode was a 12 apparently, which was quite weird. Yeah, all the other ones have been 6+, but this one said it was a 12, but I didn't see anything violent in it, so I think that might have been a minor mistake, but sorry. I think it's meant to be 6+.
I suppose you've got guns shooting, but there's no...
It might be because of what Smee says near the end. He does say some, like, a rip tearing you limb from limb.
Yes, he does, yes.
Maybe that would...
I'll rip you limbs from limbs, yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, I've seen some of the stuff George watches, and you know, it's like, maybe not that. But I chose not to watch it with him because I thought I want to see how these episodes go, and then I'll go back and watch them with him if I think it's appropriate for him. And so far, I don't think there's anything that would really scare him or really put him off. I think as well, you know, they're normally just over half an hour, aren't they? So
yeah.
They're not. It's not an hour long kind of, you know. Or tell you what, George, we're going to sit down for the next 9 hours and watch Star Wars. He's not going to do.
Well, that's what the sequels are all so long, like 2 hours 15, 2.5 hours, that kind of thing.
He's going to struggle to sit and watch it and that. Whereas, you know, I can't wait till I think he's probably close to the age of being able to watch Rebels. And that, you know, I know it was only last year we watched Rebels. I'm looking forward to go back and watch it again. And same with Clone Wars. I mean, again, I know there's certain episodes that maybe I might skip and that, but
some skip for you and some skip for him.
Yeah,
because some are a bit brutal and some are just unbearable.
That's the same with the prequels. Yes, there's a lot of wordy stuff, but there's also, you know, there's mass genocide, there's, you know, killing of some people, there's killing younglings. Yeah. You know, how Anakin and Obi-Wan, kind of leave each other. It's quite brutal. And that's so. I'm not sure. He's seen Darth Maul fight Obi-Wan and Anakin. You know, he's seen that, and he does really like that. And obviously, when Maul kind of pops, I says, "He's all right. He's not dead," which he's not. Spoilers. But yeah, I think this is something I will be able to sit down and watch. I think you'll really enjoy it. Especially, I mean, there's two characters that probably people really love. Neel is obviously one of the big characters, but, you know, Smee as well. And that, although Smee might be a bit scary after today.
Yeah, poor Smee. Yeah, I mean, the characters are great in this. I do agree. I mean, we'll delve into the episode loosely, but there's not a specific. We'd have to go like chronologically. But like with the characters, have you got a favourite of them? I know you said which you think people like the most, but who have you really enjoyed seeing so far?
I think it is them too. I mean, Neel, I like Neel because he's very, him and KB, to be fair, they're very level-headed. I mean, Neel he does say himself he's a coward, but he seems very kind of with it and understanding. Wim's that character that you're gonna love to hate because you just know he just doesn't think. But having kids, I see that all the time. You know, when they just run off and it's like, oh, I'll be fine, and then they come back and like their arms kind of half falling off, and it's like, oh. But I get it, and I get why he's there. You know, Fern, she is older than them, isn't she?
I think a little bit, yeah.
So. And I think, especially in this episode, you can see that toll is taken on her because she feels that she has to be. When she first started, I thought she was very Flash Thompson. That kind of a bully, but again, where they come from, there's not war, there's none of that. Oh, the kids don't see any of that. So it's an interesting, even though they don't see any of that, she's still a bit of a bully kind of thing, but not quite. But then I think they need it for the dynamic that, you know, all four of them serve a certain dynamic for the crew and that. But yeah, I think Neel is the one that I kind of gravitated towards. I think he's the one that you would listen to because he seems quite sensible. And that,
as a parent, you say you're like, my favourite one is the responsible child of these group of kids. He's the good one. It's very rare
to have a responsible, you know, child who's actually thinking, you know what, that's probably a stupid thing to do. You know, I mean, my eldest, he tells me stories of certain stuff that he used to do, and he's like, oh, you never believe I did this, and I'm like, yeah, I did all that stuff when I was little. Yeah, you know, you're not telling me anything. And I know it was stupid, and I probably shouldn't have done it. I know I shouldn't have done any of that. But, so yeah, you look at Neel and you think, yeah, he's the one. And that. Smee, I mean, Nick Foster's, you mentioned, do you know whether he was on set or not? Did you look into
that? No, I think he probably, they haven't been clear online, but there was mention in one interview that he has visited set. So I think he probably went to set, met the kids, and then did a lot of the voice work, I think, or potentially did the voice work, then met the kids. I'm not. I think he's interacted with the kids. He's seen the sets. He's been in the immersion of it all, but I don't think he's done all the body movements. I imagine they'll say at the end, like they normally reveal that kind of thing. They don't often want to spoil the magic until the end of it to see. So keep your eyes posted on that. Yeah. But I think he does a great job.
Yeah, he does. I think. He's very good at them little one. I mean, you know, it's like the babysitting. Come on, 1, 2. He's perfect for that kind of. I mean, it's like I said, this is very Peter Pan. He's like Nanny to a certain degree.
Yeah,
and that. I think later on in the episode we actually get a Rufio kind of character from Hook. But. I think he's really good in it. I do like it, and you do, especially the fact that in the first episode in the second episode when he just went badass.
Oh and he just took names,
and you're like, whoa, and that's what worried me in this episode when he started to kind of extend So in Ahsoka the droids kind of do that, don't they? There's a couple of the.
Yeah, it's quite common actually. I say common, but like in, I think it's in Clone Wars or in Rebels or something. There's the odd time where a bigger droid kind of. I mean, it's like Transformers. That's what it makes me think of. It's just like, you go, I can fight you, and you're like, no, you can't. And then the shoulders kind of go, and like rockets come out of the arms, and then they grow like 8 feet in size and double in the side. And you're like, oh no, what have we done? Yeah, that's kind of what it made me think of. But it was like his transformation was quite almost werewolf-like kind of thing, like transforming into like a monster kind of thing. I got that vibe.
Yeah, because I mean, he's knackered, isn't he? You know,
you can see when he's talking to Jude Law.
But it's one of those things. Because I must admit, when I started watching it and I saw the the planet that landed on, part of me actually thought, oh, is this a time travel thing?
That's exactly what I thought.
And that,
Exactly
but then
what I thought.
as we go into it, no, I think I've got theories on what it is, but because then that's why we're thinking: is he like an older droid that's been there for so long, and we've just time traveled back and that? I don't. But obviously, as we go into the episode, we find out why he can't remember certain things and that. But I just, as I say, I think he works really well. It does feel like they're all feeding off each other, and it doesn't feel like. I mean, I've been and watched Craven. Anyone who's listening, don't go watch it. It's horrible. The dialogue just doesn't work. It doesn't flow. You know, you feel like they are kind of, they've got the script in front of them, like, oh, yes, so this is what we are doing. It doesn't, in this, it feels natural. It feels like it is a conversation. Whereas, there's, as I say in Craven, it really doesn't. It just doesn't flow. I believe when they are having these discussions with each other, it doesn't feel like it's a script.
Right.
Which again, that's where Acolyte kind of felt at times very
I agree
scripted.
with you, actually. I enjoyed Acolyte, but there were certain points. I agree. The delivery and the dialogue was very
Acolyte
written.
looked good.
Yeah.
It
looked like
good.
prequels. Looked good, but the dialogue was not the great, and the plot had some holes in it.
Yeah, and it felt like at times, well, if we just show you let's say a lightsaber bleed, crystal bleed, everyone will forget that the dialogue's been shite. So, we'll throw a few Easter eggs at you, and you'll forget the fact that this is just not hitting. Whereas this and that, again, maybe because as well, it's just short episodes. It's just like 30, 40-minute episodes. It doesn't feel like it's drawn out. It doesn't feel like it's it's forcing anything. It just feels that you're along for the ride with them.
Yeah, I agree. I think this show will be one, much like Acolyte, which when you watch it all in one go, it will be a lot better. Like, I think Mandalorian, you can watch it episodically or one after another. It doesn't really make a difference. But
they're Monster of the Week, especially at the start. They're very much Monster of the Week.
Yeah, and I think Book of Boba Fett, to a degree, is a little bit like that, where it's kind of like flashback of the week, what lesson did Boba Fett learn kind of thing. But I think that Obi-Wan Kenobi definitely. Ahsoka, I think, does kind of fit into that as well. Sort of Kenobi, Ahsoka, Acolyte, and this are all kind of like one-off stories. I say one-off because there's going to be a second season of Ahsoka, but like one-off stories in the sense of you can watch it start to finish, and I think binging would benefit. And I think this show, next year, when Christmas comes around and people either rewatch it or watch it with kids or whatever, it's going to get another like wave of following, because I think all Star Wars shows and Marvel shows get the thing where initially you get people like us who watch them like immediately or within the first few days, and then you get a lot of people who just wait until a few episodes are out or things like that. And I said that when you, me and Dave, when the next animated show comes out, what we'll probably do maybe is once it's kind of like, because it goes on, there's like 16 episodes, so it goes on for like 4 months. We can't do a weekly show on a 20-minute episode. It's just not enough to talk about, really, to make it worth a half an hour to an hour of
you can't
chatting.
guarantee what, if it ends up being a case of, there could be something cool in it, but sometimes, like we were saying, the podcast will be longer than what the episode is.
Yeah, and that does sometimes happen, but like doing it every week, all the time, there's so many episodes. So what I kind of thought was, maybe when it's partway through, we'll watch it in chunks. So when episode 8 or something's out, we can then do the first 3, then the next 3, and by the time that we've kind of recorded, the finale will be out. So we've just kind of done it in chunks again. And I think that's, if I didn't do this weekly discussion show, which I do really like doing, I think with Skeleton Crew, I would probably wait, because where there's no real spoilers in this, which I quite like as well. I haven't had to avoid the internet because, oh no, this character has popped up in Ahsoka, or, oh my god, this flashback with Anakin was like this, or in Acolyte, can you, like the gifs of Acolyte where it's the lightsaber bleeding, or the certain like really cool Force stuff happening with the Stranger and things, Chimera. And it's just like, with this, it's really easy going. It's just, I kind of felt that way with Agatha all along to a degree, where apart from like one thing, which I managed to avoid, it was pretty much just people posting online weren't posting overt spoilers because it wasn't having loads of cameos and things like that. And I think this I would really like to watch in chunks again.
Yeah, it's like when we changed the form. Well, you changed the format, should we say? The way we do Clone Wars conversations, instead of just watching, a big season and then trying to, because I mean, Dave says it when he binge watches certain stuff, he miss things, or he doesn't remember it being. Now it works good and bad because there are a few episodes where it's like, oh my gosh. But I think because you just take a few at a time, you take like a chunk out, it works really well, and we've got plenty to talk about. Whereas, like you say, if it was like, oh, right, well, let's review this 20-minute episode, it's like not a lot happened.
Could you imagine doing that with the Sunny Day and the Droids? Do you remember the? Could you imagine
Yeah,
doing one episode per episode of that?
that's one of those where I'd be, I'm sick. I can't. You guys go without me.
I'll just catch up on the next episode. I'll just give you like a 2 minute
It's
summary.
funny because some of the droids stuff just I don't know. They frustrate me a little bit. But yeah, one of the best characters in this is a droid.
Yeah.
And that.
He's great. He's like an old man. He's kind of, what I like about the show is a lot of it is like homages to older stuff. Like I've written down, this is quite a tropey sort of episode, especially with kids, where they go somewhere and there's a war being fought and there's kids fighting. Like that's quite, when you have a group of kids that go on a crazy adventure, that usually pops up somewhere. And I'm not complaining about that because what I quite like about this is it's almost like, here's the new generation of action adventure-y kind of stuff. And it's like, here's lots of little nods and things. And the more films you watch, the more kind of little nods you'll get. But it's not tropey to the degree it's like a parody, and it's not tropey to the degree that I feel like the story suffers. I was like, oh, it's one of these kind of episodes. But what they did is they go, right, well, we're going to show briefly that Fern is like struggling to be a leader and struggling with responsibility. And it's like, that's really interesting for her character. Wim is showing more sympathy. And although he's rushing off to stuff, he is being a bit more personable and a bit less headstrong. That's good. And then we're also, the main character is, I wrote this a Neel-centric episode. And he really shows you that you can be brave, but also worried about things. You can be scared, but also a hero. And that's such an important thing. And I think too often in Goonies type kind of shows or movies, you get the scaredy cat character who doesn't really do anything until maybe right at the end. He'll just do one little, that they will really do one little thing. But I found with this, they really balanced it well of going, it's okay that you're not rushing into stuff. It's okay to take a moment and to check things over. You can still be important to the group with that. I really love that element of this.
I think that's where, to be fair, actually, this might work quite well with young kids because then
100%.
they can see Neel go, it's all right to be scared. Is it Hina? I think she's called the girl.
The younger?
The young girl who kind of takes him to the.
I didn't write down her name. I'm in order to be completely honest. So if I think you are right. I'll double check on IMDb, but I think you are right.
She kind of says, your weakness is actually your strength. Kind of is roundabout is what she kind of says, which is true. The fact, and I think it's good if kids want to watch this and realize that, there are a couple that like will be like Wimmer Wolf running headstrong, and it's like when he picks them, look at this big gun, yeah. It's like, yeah, that's cool, mate, but I know what's going to happen when you shoot that. I've shot weapons myself. I know what the kickback's going to be. I know what's going to happen to you, and they kind of, I think they toned it down a bit. They didn't send him flying as far as what I thought they were going to do, but.
And her name is Hina. You're right. Sorry.
All right.
Hina.
There is lots of kids who will be like Neel, who will be the quiet ones. And it's good to be able to see that and think, actually, yeah, but he's still very important. He's still brave. I mean, the bit at the end where it's like, where he throws a rock at me and it's like, kind of come at me. And then that look of, oh, what have I done? But it's about being brave in the right point, and that his friends were in trouble, he had to act on it. And yeah, he even says when they're kind of walking into the kind of scouting ahead, he says, "This isn't right, and it's not just because I'm scared." And that he acknowledges the fact that he is scared, and he's not scared about being scared, because it's got him where he is today. and that, you know, he is very logical in how he thinks of things. And it's like, yeah, you know, I'm not going to put myself in danger if I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And that, but at the same point, his friends are there, so he's gonna do that because he has to save his friends.
I
You
agree.
know,
And I think also with Hayna, she's quite cool because she lives a completely different life and it really gives the kids perspective. And I think that's so important as well because, you know, a large amount of, well, a huge amount of people who can afford to buy Star Wars merch or have a smart TV or watch Disney Plus, we are in the upper percent of wealth in the world. You know, there's 7 or 8 billion people in the world, and it's a decent chunk of them are either living in poverty or are living in, you know, extreme poor conditions, or potentially are just living in conditions where they don't have a TV and the internet and that kind of thing. So the percentage of the world that can actually consume things like Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars, the original films, you know, they've gone on VHS. They've traveled the world for decades. I think, you know, a lot of civilizations more will have known loosely what Star Wars is. But this specific show, the majority of kids that would watch it would not be living on the poverty line, I would say, or at least a decent chunk of them. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm not trying to disparage anyone who is and enjoys Star Wars, but I think this episode's important for those kids. Kids, you know, when I grew up, I didn't grow up poor. My dad, you know, worked for a living, and I'm contributing probably why he died so early is he worked really, really hard, and we had money, and I am forever privileged of that, and I'm so grateful. But me, if I saw this show when I was younger, it would have really made me think about my privilege. And I've got moments in my mind where I remember going on holiday to certain places, or even going in the UK to certain places and seeing different levels of wealth, especially with kids and things. And it really made me go, oh, wow, I'm so lucky. The things I was complaining about aren't actually as bad. You know, not to say if you live in a first world country, you can't complain about things or have issues, but like it does put things into perspective. And I think that's what it really does with Wim in this episode as well, where he's like, he's kind of saying, oh, I was kind of bored and stuff. Then he comes here and they're like, oh yeah, we always have war. And it's like, I think I'd rather be a bit bored and a bit cushy, which I think is so important for a lot of the kids who probably do watch this.
yeah. I mean, it's funny because there's a scene with Neel when he takes his daily rations and he gives it to the two kids who are just kind of sat on the roof. I watched that and it's good because it shows that hey, she kind of sees and thinks, oh, he actually does care. You know, he doesn't know any of us, but he still cares. And I thought that's nice. But then part of me thought, would that have been better if that had been Wim? If he'd have taken his reactions and thought, you know what, this is not the life. You know, we had it actually quite cushy. And maybe if it had been him that had given his food up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it could have made him. I'm sure there's going to be something that's going to make him grow.
That's what, you know,
100%. Whether it's a case of he's misguided by Jod, or whether he makes the wrong decision and it injures someone or something like that. You're not quite sure, but there will be a learning curve for him, and I think it'll be quite steep for him.
Yeah.
But having said that, the moment that him and Fern have in this episode, when he's like, so Captain, and he's still kind of all, you know, excited about it, and then he realizes, oh, she's struggling here. So then he goes to reassure. So there is a kindness behind him. He's just, I think it's a case of he's scared and he's bored, but it's easy to have that bravado on, and he shows it a little bit different and a little bit more loose than what some of the others do.
Yeah. I think each episode's going to show each character kind of growing a bit.
This was very much, like you said, Neel's episode.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of highlights and it shows him, and it shows that kind of growth of where him being the scared person, but to the point where he then does actually be quite brave as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this really shows like how vulnerable the characters can be, because I'm fairly certain that this series doesn't have 9 episodes. I think it just has the 8 episodes of season 1. I'm just double checking that. Yeah, so there's only 8. So this is the halfway mark. So we're halfway through, and it feels weird because technically we've only had 3 episodes of 8, which feels like more of a third. but it's 3 releases because obviously the first 2 episodes came out in the first week. So it's like we do have 4 episodes. So we've seen half the season, but actually if we only had it for 3 weeks. So it's quite odd in that regard. But yeah, I like where this is going. And I'm interested because I think it was Spider-Dan, but it might have been Thomas who said about there being like, how would this work if there was another season? And I quite like that idea because I feel like these characters really, they have room to grow on this journey, but because they're quite young and because they could do it again in like a couple of years' time or something. It could be they could almost have a trilogy of series of this, like 3 series of it, just one every few years of kind of like, this is when they're sort of, 12 sort of preteens, then one when they're kind of just becoming teenagers, that kind of age, and then one when they're a bit older and they're sort of growing up a bit. I would really love to see a couple of seasons of that, of just really seeing their growth as characters, because I agree with what you say. With Wim, it would have been cool to see him have that growth, but I think he's got something bigger to go and a bit more bombastic probably, and he almost seemed like the main character to begin with, and then they've kind of focused on everyone else, his crew, which I do really like as well.
Shared it out a lot more.
Exactly. We got his background, and he's the kind of the reason they all got trapped in air quotes on this adventure, and then he's kind of taken a back seat for the audience so we can get to know who did he take with him, and then it's probably going to be he's probably going to be the main reason how they do get home, or an issue that occurs so they don't get home. Like, again, he's got more growth, I think.
Yeah, I must admit that there's a part in I didn't write them all down. I was meant to do, and I say I knew I would push for time when I was watching the episodes, and I was meant to go back and write, but it turns out there's a few planets like Attin.
Yeah,
so I didn't write them all down.
Yeah, I didn't write them all down either.
There was Atazan, I think there was. I think there was 5.
Yeah.
So part of me kind of thought, I wonder then maybe they will do. Is it going to be one of these where they're going to have to jump from planet to planet to try find the coordinates to be able to get back home? Is that going to be the next 4 episodes? Of that going to be visiting the other planets to then get back to where they need to be?
That's interesting. That could be right. Actually, that's not a bad idea to see what all the different. What happened to each of these planets? Why they are destroyed or whatever? With what Kim the Owl Lady said.
Yeah, because I think my theory is there is 5 planets all the same, and they was trying to obviously. They must have been trying to do something. Whether it's, I don't think it's just about the money. I think there's something else there that they're trying to obviously do. Whether it's something with the Force or what, I don't know. But I think they picked 5 planets and they've hidden them, and then it's a case of see which one kind of finds. Maybe it's that resource or something like that. Obviously, is it Akar?
Well, I've got here that there's 9 planets in total, but only 6 of them were named.
Right.
One of them being Attin already. So we learnt 5 new names, but there's 9 planets in the Jewels of the Old Republic in total. Do you want me to list them?
You can do.
So they're all at something. So it's at Attin is the one we know. Then at Aitu, Aytuu, at Akron, which is where they were, at Raven, at Arissa, and Atakoda. So there's going to be more, but sorry, I just thought I'd get that out of the way of people thinking.
Yeah, I just wonder whether it is a case of do they have to kind of go from one to another to find their way back to Attin, which then it's this is the thing. It is only meant to be one season, but that's where they could spread out into a second season if it was a case of right. Well, we can go to a couple of planets here. Or maybe what they could do is do a couple of planets and get back home, but then go, yeah, we actually only visited 4 of the planets. There's another 5 out there. Season 2. There we go.
Yeah, we have to see what's this big barrier, what's this big lie all about. Let's go tell the other planets this is what actually happened kind of thing, or find out if there's anyone else trapped. Because
obviously Attin seems nice. There's something else going on in the background that we don't know about, but it seems very nice. This one is a bit water on.
Yeah.
Where are the others? Have the others, actually, now this has got me thinking. Did Jod come from one of these other ones? Because there's a bit when he kind of they step onto the planet, it's like, oh, dusty. This reminds me of where I came from,
Yeah.
and that. So I thought, oh, but I did look. Crimson Jack is mentioned in a comic. He does come from, is it Hylon Legacy?
Well, in all honesty, I know he comes up in something, but I hadn't had time to research exactly where. So I'll take what you've said as gospel. I think it's only like one appearance or two. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Maybe I have. What was it called again? Sorry, Halcyon Legacy.
Yeah.
Oh, I've actually tackled that on the show. Funnily enough. Yeah.
It could have just been a small part in it.
I think
there's not a lot about him really.
I think what happened is I think Star Wars Explained did a video on this, and what I think it is that he calls himself Crimson Jack to wherever that group of people were, to kind of as a cover to actually, like, there was a Crimson Jack and he stole his identity or was impersonating him. I'm not entirely sure, because I think that the Crimson Jack in the comics has got like a big ginger mustache and like red hair.
That's him. Yeah.
So it's like I don't think he's maybe the same person.
Yeah, it does say the name Crimson Jack was also an alias of Jod Narnevod.
Yeah.
25 years earlier. So this is the one that Ethan Sachs did is 25 years.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not the same character.
Well, it's because Halcyon Legacy, it's based on the Galactic Star Cruiser, which is, do you remember the Disney theme park hotel you could stay in that was like 2 or 3 days, and it was like a fully immersive experience, and it was ridiculously expensive. That was on the Halcyon Legacy. I think I'm pronouncing it wrong. Halcyon Legacy, I think it is.
Yeah, I'm not going to attempt it.
The Halcyon Legacy, it's a 5-part mini-series, and it's all set on the Galactic Star Cruiser, but each episode has a flashback in it. So it's like, one's from the High Republic, one's from the Clone Wars, one's from sort of Rebels era, one's from Galactic Civil War, one's from like sequel era. So it's like, with that, when you said, oh yeah, it's this character, I was like, which, depending on which story it was, and depending, obviously, you've just looked it up, which has confirmed it. But like, I recall it being, completely different sort of character. But again, he, as you say, he might have taken it from Jack originally, or it might just be one of those kind of classic pirate names that just gets passed down. We might find out, like, even 100 years before that, there was someone called Crimson Jack.
The thing is, I suppose, if it's like this, it's like, oh, Blackbeard. Lots of people know the name Blackbeard. And I'm sure that's probably been used many, many times. It's just, this is the new Blackbeard. So it could be a case of that there is a character and it got briefly mentioned at one point. So then they're like, right, we'll steal that and we'll use this and then we'll just fit it to where we want. And we can just say, well, yeah, just took it from a previous, Crimson Jack, Jan Howard, whatever you want to call him.
Well, speaking of Jod, like, what do you think about him? Because obviously he wasn't on screen very much, but him and Smee went off, and then they got the EOPs, and he used the credits he stole from Fern to kind of buy them and sort that out. So, how did you kind of think about that, and what do you think of Jod so far?
I don't think they've done a lot with him, and I think they're holding him back for something else. There was a lightsaber there. Did you see that when he opened the pack?
No, I didn't. No.
Right. Well, it definitely looked like a lightsaber.
Right, I see.
To me, again, my knowledge isn't as good, but it looked a bit more like a one of the guards.
Like an electro staff blade.
No, one of the. What's the helmet that Kanan puts on?
Oh, Jedi Temple Guard. Oh,
you think Temple Guard? It's like a white.
Oh,
it looks white and gold.
Right, like almost like a staff kind of thing or a pike. Yeah. Because I was thinking of there's vibro blades, but no, you're thinking of an actual type of lightsaber. Yeah.
Because I thought at first, I thought that was his pack, but then when he took the credits out, I thought, well, that can't be his pack. That must be Wim's pack. And I thought, I don't remember him ever having the lightsaber.
Didn't he have the handle, and that was the thing he played with Neel on? He were like,
oh, maybe. Yes, it could be just a toy.
I think it was because in the first episode they pretended to play in the streets, and they were like,
yeah.
And I think
but then there was also like they looked like a gold ball, which I think maybe that's the game that Neel mentions slap ball.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what that's from. But yeah, it was just. I don't think they've really. We know he's got his force powers of some form or other.
Yeah.
And that, but even he said, I never said I was a Jedi. So it could be one of those. He could have been a Padawan and just never finished his training. There's lots of them who get to a certain point. It's like, no, you're not going to make it, so you get kicked out and that. So where he comes from, we don't really know. We don't. I think there's going to be something major about him, I'm sure, at some point, but still, it's strange the fact he's the adult, but yet he was treated like a child an awful lot in this. Like the babysitting thing. When they find the planet, it's like, wow, Attin. It's like no adults on in the captain's crew or something like that. They said to him, it's like, oh.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, Jude Law, he is interesting because Jude Law is quite Jude Law-y.
Charismatic.
Yeah, I like him, and he does fit the universe, but he's not like, this isn't him acting in a way that's like, oh my God, it's showcasing acting. This is like Jude Law safely doing what Jude Law does, which is being quite charming, but he's got a little bit of mischievousness with him. And I quite like Jude Law when he plays the baddie or plays like more mischievous roles. I quite like that.
He's very grey.
Yeah,
at the moment.
He's got the charm. Like there's a lot of characters like in Star Wars Outlaws and obviously like Han Solo, like both when you've got K-Vess from Outlaws, things like that, when you've got the charisma, you can kind of get away with being sort of morally grey. Hondo's like it as well. Like Mondo flat out like kills people cold blood, but because he kind of makes jokes about it and is like, oh yeah, hey friends, Kenobi, that kind of thing. It's like, he's all right. So he's actually he is a murderer and a pirate, but because of the charisma, he gets away with it. And I think that's a bit like Jod. And I think Star Wars has a lot of, if you're really charismatic in Star Wars, you can get away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. The thing is, he rescues them at the end of the episode, but I think he says that he paid, he dealt with the other side. He paid them a bounty for the is it Epelons, the beasts.
Oh, I think it was called was it Eopes?
Eopes.
Yes, I'll double check that. But yeah,
it's that thing of, I think there's something more because he surrendered very quickly. It's like, oh, just shoot me now. But I don't know, something more has happened there. Maybe that's the 17-minute episode where we kind of see what he actually did do. Maybe he sold them out. Maybe he's kind of said, look, these kids, I need to go get them back, and they're going to lead us to Attin. We'll put a track on the ship. You can follow where we're going. Maybe I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. Or maybe we get it where he's in a situation, he betrays them, and then we get like a flashback episode of what made him and who he is. And then kind of the end of the episode is him remembering or whatever the flashback we've just seen, and then him being kind of good. Like, I suspect that'll be something, but I just wanted to look up. I was fairly certain of this, but I just wanted to be sure. So I looked up Eopes, and they are in The Phantom Menace. They're in the infamous part where you've got the pod racing, and then one of them farts, and Jar Jar says, oh, that's gross. And I think it poops as well at one point. And then also, it's in a few Clone Wars episodes, but also in the Kenobi show, in the first and last episode, because, he cuts up the meat when he's doing the stuff, and he feeds it to his little, his steed, who is also in the Eopes. So he's in that, and then... in a couple of other sort of minor things, but those little creatures, from the prequels, always good to see them too. But yeah, I mean, I think with this episode, like the only other thing I've got, now I did like this episode. I think still for me, my favorite is probably episode 2. Then I think I'm maybe episode 3, then 1, then this one. I think this might have been my least favorite. I did really like the end I didn't dislike the episode at all. But I just think the middle, there was the Neel stuff, which was nice, but the plot kind of plodded a bit. But one thing I did really feel is this was the first episode it felt really like the volume, the big CGI green screeny thing they use, which is like the special technology. Like there's certain scenes, like the market scenes, and when they're walking around, it feels very lived in, it feels very real, and I really like that. Even though it's still filmed on the volume, you've got physical sets and physical people, and the ground's all physical. It's just that sort of almost between the sets, and then the like upper background, it's just like Star Warsy Starscape. Like, I love that. But there's a couple of shots, some of the wider shots, especially when they walk up to that headless statue, and I was like, this looks like they're looking at a big flat projection screen. Yeah. And I was like, it did really feel like that. And again, I know they're series and they're going to have as high a budget as some of the movies and things. And I wonder if with the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, they're going to have more shot on location. I really hope they do, but I imagine they won't. But yeah, I wonder what you kind of thought. Did you feel that at all in this episode or not?
A little bit. With the King Headless, yeah, it did kind of feel... Because I was thinking... I think in the first episode there is a statue at the show, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, same.
So I'm thinking, oh, maybe that's their leader, but I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch the first one. But it kind of felt like, oh, there's a statue. Who is this? And then nothing. And it's like, this episode, I enjoyed it. I do think it's probably the bottom of the four so far, but I think because a lot of it's more about kind of trying to tell you a bit of background about, or give you a bit more background about the characters. So although it's important, it's not got, pirates and droids fighting each other. It's not got that first episode of like, we find a spaceship and all this other bits and bobs like that. It has a bit of a cool thing at the end, but again, that's kind of dealt with very quickly.
Yeah.
So that could have gone really badly, but they kind of knocked on its head very quickly. So there's none of that. Even like the bit where, you lead us into battle, you go scout, you kind of think, oh, they're going to come against this other army, what's going to happen? And then again, nothing really happened.
Yeah, it's just like John stumbles out with Smee and then the herd, and you're like, oh, cool. And it's like, what, you just let him just buy all the herd and just wander off into the wilderness, and he just did with Smee, and that's what he's been doing for the last however long. And it's like, okay, I guess that's fine. But yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think this is the start. I think it was the last 3 episodes are kind of their own little collection of introducing all of the characters together, showing you who they really are, getting Smee and the ship and everything like that, and shooting off into the distance. And then this is kind of the part 1 of the next sort of... I think episode 5 and 6 is going to be still exploring, and I think at the end of episode 6, or maybe on episode 7, they're going to make it back home. And then there's going to be an episode, or maybe an episode or 2, of like, they're going to be chased by something on the way home, or something's going to secretly, attack them when they get home and reveal Attin to the universe, and that's going to maybe open up things. Like, I feel like that's kind of where this is going. And I think this is the start of the kind of the exploration trilogy. I wouldn't be surprised if you said if the next 2 episodes are going to other places.
Yeah, but the thing is, I wonder whether that 70-minute episode maybe is the pirates, because the pirates are going to try to track them, or it kind of gave you that vibe that
that's a good point. Actually,
Brutus wants him. He wants Jod back, or to get him at least.
Maybe it would show from their perspective. Maybe it would show like how Jod has actually kind of screwed them over a bit, and why they don't like him so much.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
So maybe it's kind of a flip side of, and then maybe you go back to, you see kind of a really dark secret about Jod, and you think, oh, sugar. And then it goes back to the next episode of him with the kids like, come on, kids. Yeah, don't worry. Uncle Jod will look after you. And you're thinking, no. So that could be where there's a bit of a twist there, because the thing is, the pirates were cool. We saw lots of different species there. Plus you've got a werewolf pirate. Amazing. And it'd be a shame if they don't do something more with that.
Yeah.
So, is it a case of, they've got to do something more. So maybe the pirates kind of follow them, and they're kind of always like one step behind, maybe, I don't know, but uh, this is one of the good things. We don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
We don't know what the end is. We don't really have anything, even trying to kind of think, like, Crimson Jack, fine, I found something about him. And it's not, it's a different Crimson Jack. And it's like, so we don't know any of these characters. And that, yeah, you can kind of look back to, like I say, Peter Pan. It's like, I say that Hannah, she was very much like Rufio from Hook.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's kind of what, and that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to give you them vibes so that you can kind of, I can place where they are, and even if you never go back to them and never do anything with them again, you're still going to probably remember that person.
Mm.
And that, so it's good. Maybe it is little breadcrumbs, or whether it is just kind of, well, we've dealt with that and move on to the next thing. I don't know.
Well, not every plot point has to, like, not every character introduction has to be significant. And also, I think another important lesson for kids, because I've thought about this, is there are certain people in your life, be it either not quite romantic, but sometimes you meet someone of the gender or genders that you are attracted to, and you go, oh, there's a spark there. But I'm talking normally when you're like a teenager. You know, sometimes you go on like a school trip or something, or you go on holiday and you meet someone and it's like, oh, this is really cute. This is like before proper gets into like physical stuff. I'm talking like when you're young. And you're just like, you kind of have a little maybe crush, like a holiday romance kind of thing, or you just hang out with someone for like a whole day randomly and just never see them again. You don't barely even know their name. Like most people have got a few memories here and there where every now and then, even in your adult life, like some people like get stuck in an elevator with someone, or like Megan was at like waiting at like a hospital, the A&E, or it wasn't quite A&E, it was like the non-emergency A&E thing, and just because she really hurt, she messed up her ankle, and so she was sat there for like 3 or 4 hours. Now she's got someone who she's like Facebook friends with, and we gave her a lift somewhere once, and it's just like, doesn't really talk to her, but she remembers that person, even though that person hasn't had a huge impact on their life necessarily. There still was an impact there. And I think there are times we can remember where we have had someone who has actually, maybe they as a person don't mean as much to us anymore, but maybe they did say something, or you did something with them, like you ran away from your parents one day and
you shared a bit of a moment with them over something.
Just the two of you and no one else was there. And I really like that kind of stuff. You know, I think that's a really understated part of growing up that I really like in like coming of age movies.
Yeah, because I think when things like that, you realise it's like when you're at school, you met your friends and you think, well, yeah, we're going to be best mates forever. And then as you're getting older, you realise that, no, you're not going to be best mates. People are going to come in and out of your life.
Yeah.
You know, and that's fine. It's fine, like you said, to share that moment. You know, there's a moment with them both, and they're both going to go away, and Neel kind of, you know, he took control of a situation. He kind of got over his being scared. But at the same point, she makes a comment of, yeah, when I take over this, maybe I'll do things a different way. So maybe if they do go back to the planet, let's say in 20 years' time, that both factions are actually working together again. You know, maybe it just took that one person to say, look, maybe war, just because that's all you've ever known, isn't the way to go. You know, maybe we just try. You know, he says, I would do the most scary thing and just say, I'm sorry. And that, you know, it is sometimes it's hard to say that and hard to admit that you're wrong, or hard to just go, look, we've messed up here. Let's move past and let's make a better future. Why we're killing each other? You know, she says each generation is weakening itself. So this has been going on for, you know, so many generations. All it takes is one person to be strong enough to go, let's just stop this. Let's make it work.
And because Jod kind of gave it the nudge, not because he's a noble person, but just to get the kids out of it, because there was the almost truce, the kind of like, here's a way to start anew. And what I quite liked about that was it was kind of left, maybe they'll pop up again, as you say, but maybe not. I'd almost rather they didn't. And then, yeah, in 10 years time or something, when we've completely forgotten about them, Neel just goes back there or something, or we just get a little story or a little comic or anything, or even a book.
I think he would do that. He would want to go back and find out what's going on.
Yeah, and it would be really nice. Like I like that kind of thing. That's one of the things I quite like about some of the Star Wars books. But was there anything else you want to mention? I know we didn't really talk about Smee at the end very much, so I didn't know if you want to talk a little bit more about when he went mental.
Yeah, because again, women Fern have that kind of little heart-to-heart kind of thing where, and I think she mentioned something. Yeah, well, Joyce just does as told, and then it twigs. So then she kind of goes to Smee and she's like, right, basically reboots his memory so that he can remember. And you start thinking, oh, very clever. And then all of a sudden it backfires.
Yes.
And it's like, yes, Captain said that if anyone asked after this or saw the coordinates, you rip them limb from limb. And you think, oh dear. And then it starts growing and getting bigger and thinking, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
And there's a weird camera angle as well, which is like looking at him like from his chest up, and it's quite an unnerving camera angle, I found.
It had that thought. You remember in Age of Ultron when one of the suits kind of comes out and it's like all, broken and knackered up and that. It had that kind of thing of, even though it was so knackered, you knew the power behind it. And this here, you've got two small children. Even George, he's fumbling trying to get the blaster to work. And that's the point you think, oh God, that they're in trouble here. But it builds up to lead to that moment where Neil's like, get away from my friends. It had that, Ripley vibes of get away from her, you bitch, kind of thing. But again, the reaction then obviously as he comes towards him, John turns him off, and then Neel does do that. Oh yeah, and passes out.
Yeah,
which I'm sure if I'd have been in that situation, I'd have probably pissed myself. And
it's one of the things I like as a trope is when you get like a situation where a lot of like civilians are in a situation with like one or two badasses, and then it all kind of ends and they come like, right, I got you out of the situation, and one of them just goes and just pukes everywhere, and I'm like, that, like, after seeing like someone's head explode or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, that kind of thing. And those sort of real human bits that we really are getting with these kids that I really like. There's just the little details of just like, they're so nice about them.
That's the thing. The amount of times you watch, you'll watch an action film and you think, yeah, I'd do that. I'd be a badass, Oh, look, she's getting mugged. I'll jump in and out. Realistically, in the real world, your first mind is thinking, oh, I might say something, but, I don't want to put myself in danger as well to a certain degree because, like, maybe you've got your kids with you or something like that. So it's all right thinking you're a badass, but in real life, there's certain things where, that fight and flight kind of kicks in and you think, yeah, you can't just go charging in. You can't do a whim. You've got to kind of think, hang on a minute. And then that adrenaline kind of eases off, and then that's the point when your body goes, dickhead, and you pass out. That's what I think is good, because, he could have kind of pulled himself out, but yeah, it's fine, don't worry, guys, I'm all right, and played it off, and you'd have thought, oh, yeah, he's a big guy now. But the fact that he passes out, he faints, you just think, yeah, I would have probably done that.
And it makes Neel as well such like a more of a favorite character where he's so fallible. He's just like, but what I also like is you don't get much. Unfortunately, you don't get much KB in this, and KB's the person I'm the most interested by. Like when she shoots, and they're like, wow, and she's like, pew pew pew, and Fern's like, wow, great shot, and it's just like she's low key really good at everything and really intelligent, and I'm like, I want to know what the visor stuff is about.
When they're looking at the statue. And they're kind of looking up at it, and then there's the blaster shot. Everyone kind of do it, and she just stands there, and she's just like,
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah,
and she's just, which goes back to, I think last week with Dan, you mentioned you wonder whether she's part robot,
cyborg, or
she's cyborg. Or maybe she kind of. This is the thing. There's so much mystery behind so many of them, and a little bit worried there's only 4 more episodes can they kind of tell us everything that we want to know, which Star Wars know the world? And that, I keep saying to you in Clone Wars conversations, it's like, oh, what about this? And you're like, yeah, I'm not telling you. And then it's like, no, you never find that out.
Yeah, there's the occasional time you ask a question and I'm like, maybe you'll find it out, maybe you won't, because sometimes there's the odd thing that you might ask about, and then there's a future little piece of content that might have a little thing in there, but it's kind of like, it's so small, if I tell you now, it'll spoil it. But if you don't know it at the time and it pops up, you'll be like, oh, that's cool. A lot of it's like that, but sometimes you ask a question, I'm like, yep, no one knows. It was like when you asked about Sci-Fi Dia stuff, I'm like, there's another book. And that's about it from here.
Yeah, I think I mentioned about Mother Talzin, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then you said, no, she's not actually in any more of these episodes after this. And it's like, oh, right, okay. Because what else?
Well, soon, once you finish the Clone Wars, and then once we've done the sort of Tales of and eventually Bad Batch, you'll be up to date for pretty much everything like I am when it comes to on-screen content. And then there won't, all the questions you can ask, I'll just be able to answer frankly and be like, either it's in a book or it's not.
Even the secret episodes.
Yes, which I'm very excited to watch. But
I mean, the thing is, there's so many. I mean, I listened to your podcast this morning talking about
Lucky Devils,
yeah, and that there's thinking about all the books that they've written, and that there's so much more Star Wars content out there. I've read the Vader comics, and I'm reading the Darth Maul comics now, and I've read some of the Dr. Aphra comics. There's so much more stuff out there. So, maybe there are some of these characters that I always wondered about. There's a story about them. And that's one of the good things about Star Wars. There's so much out there. I thought I was a fan at first, and then realised that just because you've watched all the films, that doesn't really, compared to some people, there's so much more content there that you've not seen, and then like we've said, we're watching Clone Wars and the movies then hit more, 100%. And I'm sure reading more of the comics, there's.
Oh yeah, there's certain comics and certain books like the comics. I think the Vader comics you read, I think, and we'll do a special episode about them at some point. I think once we kind of finish a lot of the watching stuff, or maybe before we delve into Bad Batch or something, we'll have a couple of comics or break or something. But even in the future, we can always delve more like back into the comics if you run out of on-screen stuff to watch. But I think it is just there's a lot of characters that you find yourself loving a lot more. There's a character called Snap Wexley in the sequel trilogy, and he dies in Rise of Skywalker, and he's like barely in it. He has like 2 lines of dialogue in each of the sequel trilogy films, but he's in the Aftermath trilogy of books, which was one of the first batch of canon Star Wars books, and there's amidst my favourite, and that's where Cobb Vanth was first introduced, and it takes place just after Return of the Jedi for about 18 months, and they're among my favourite books, and it's like Snap Wexley is him as a kid in there. And you find out why he's called Snap, and his actual name is Temmin, and who his mum is Nora Wexley, and she was actually the Y-Wing pilot in Return of the Jedi who flew into the Death Star 2 along with Lando and Nine Nunb in the Falcon. And it's like, so when I watch Return of the Jedi now, I'm like, oh, Nora's in that Y-Wing, and Snap is at the Battle of Blood. And there's little things like that where it's kind of like, if you just tell someone that, it's not as exciting. But when you read things and you follow, there's so much Star Wars content, I'm like, whatever your kind of vibe is, if you're vibing with a Dark Side comic or something like that, go for it. But if you're kind of vibing with, I want a character deep dive, or I want more information on this event, or I'm just interested by this era, there's so much you can really hyper focus on. Or some people go, I just want the romance stuff, and there's a lot of romance. Or some people are like, I just want the political stuff, and there's a lot of political stories, which I really appreciate. But I would always say, as I say to everyone, is like, if you enjoy one Star Wars film, you're a fan. Like, if you enjoy any of them, you're a fan. I just don't like it. Like, I consume a lot more than others, and I'm maybe more passionate in some respects, so I consume more content.
Anyone who's listening, just to point out, he's just remembered all that from memory. He's not got anything written down. It's just like...
But it's just one of those...
encyclopedia.
Well, it's funny because, like, I've read pretty much every canon comic, apart from like the old one and like a few that have come out in the last couple months. I've read all of them, And with the books, I've read like more than half now of the books, and I've read almost every single High Republic thing. But even then, there are people who know a lot more than I do, even about the films, because there's some people who know what's the first line of dialogue said by this character, or like behind the scenes trivia. I'm terrible at with Star Wars, but I'm really good at in-universe stuff. I know what species people are and things like that, but when it's like, who's the actor who did this? I'm not always 100% sure. Or who was the writer of this episode of Clone Wars? It's like, I can't really remember that. But what species is this person? I can probably tell you.
Yeah, but that's like, when I read certain comics, I sometimes forget to look to see who's written or who's done the artwork. I might look and see, oh, such and such has written this, and I'll look to see what else they've done. But then sometimes you forget to look at see who's done the drawings, who's done the artwork to this, because sometimes that has a certain vibe. And it's not just the story itself, it's how it looks. And you forget that, and you forget kind of, so, you'll be drawn, like you say, species over, whereas you might say, oh, who wrote this book? And you're like, I don't know, but I know I like it. And I also know that there's this and this in there and that, but everyone's got their own, I've caught you out a few times.
You have, yeah.
And that. Certain things stick in, a lot of the names can kind of stick in my mind. Whereas then, as I say, I might not remember what lightsaber, Luke had in when he found the yellow one. That. But we're all fans in our own way. It's just, like you say, some people know a lot more, and that some people just know a little bit, like myself.
Well, you know a lot. I think now that when you finish the Clone Wars, you'll know more than the average fan. You'll know more than like over half the people who watch Star Wars. And then as you read more comics and stuff, and if you delve into the books a bit more, it'll just grow. But there's not really a competition. And once I generally say, once you've kind of watched all the movies and seen all the live action and most of the animated stuff, like the majority of stuff of Star Wars content people are genuinely going to talk about. Like, aside from going to like Star Wars conventions, Star Wars books don't generally get spoken about as a major point of a conversation unless you're specifically doing a podcast on it. It's more so like when someone says, oh, I really like this character, I like Tarkin. Oh, did you know that actually underneath Tarkin's outfit he's covered in battle scars because when he grew up in Eriadu, he, as you saw in like the Vader comic, that one where it's Hunt for Tarkin,
yes,
there's another comic, it's Age of Rebellion, and it's Grand Moff Tarkin, and it details his time on that planet when he was like younger, and he's got like scars all over his body, he's got like a curved knife, and you see parts of it in that Vader comic, but it's just a one shot, it's just a one-off, and it tells you about Tarkin's life and why he's so ruthless, and someone like criticizes him for not being like a proper ruthless soldier, and then it's like a flashback of him actually being even more cutthroat, and he's got like top tier survival instincts. But I'm not going to sit there at a party and have like an hour-long conversation about Tarkin only from the comic perspective. Even if I had that kind of conversation, even if Tarkin, somehow I spoke about Star Wars for an hour at a party and also about just Tarkin, the comic element would only be a couple of minutes into that, you see? So it's just all about what I say when people watch Star Wars and want to consume more. Just pick someone on the map. I set out and I was like, I'm going to read it all. I got to that point where I was like, I'm pretty much going to read everything. And so I did the main run of Star Wars comics, and then that kind of connected with other stuff like Afra and Vader and things like that. Well, I started with Afra, then that connects to Star Wars, and that connects to Vader. But after that, I was like, where shall I go? I'll go with this Lando one, and then I'll go with this Obi-Wan and Anakin one, and then I'll go... And I just kind of dotted around as I sort of fancied, and eventually the list just got shorter, and I eventually kind of did everything. And that's what I say to people, and all the listeners, and what I said to you is, if there's any era or person that you really just want more of, just let me know, and I can tell you a lot of the best comics. Like, all the Darth Maul comics are really good to read. They're all worth a go. But I always say anything by Charles Soule. His Lando miniseries is good. The Darth Vader series he did is some of the best comics I've ever read. He's done the 2020 Star Wars run that's got some incredible one-off issues in there as well. He's done like the Kylo Ren comic. He's done loads, and he's got more coming. Yeah. And so I love that. The
Knights of Ren that's one of his as well, isn't it?
Yeah, the Rise of Kylo Ren. Yeah, and it's all about, as you say, like, and the Knights of Ren come up in the big crossover event thing, all about Kira of Crimson Dawn and stuff, set like just before Star Wars Outlaws. So again, it's just like all these things. If someone's listening and goes, I want more about all the crime syndicates in Outlaws, and I'm like, okay, War of the Bounty Hunters miniseries and the Crimson Reign miniseries and the Crimson Empire, I think it is. Crimson Reign and Crimson Empire. It's something like that. Hidden Empire, that's it. It's of the Bounty Hunters. Oh man, now I just had it. All
right, give us back your Star Wars card.
Here we go. War of the Bounty Hunters, Crimson Reign, Hidden Empire. Those are 3 comic crossover events that you can read those issues, and also you can read connecting comics, like there's Vader comics and all kinds of other stuff. But they tell stories of the crime families and bounty hunters warring over the carbonite frozen corpse of Han Solo. And Crimson Dawn get involved, and the Hutts get involved, and it's all like the bounty hunters are all trying to grab it and sell it to different crime families. And it's really interesting seeing the intricacies of what Kira from Solo kind of did after Solo. And I'm like, if you like Outlaws, delve into that. And so there's so much cool stuff that I just think Star Wars is such a great sandbox. And I'm so glad they're doing shows like this, which is just easygoing, fun for the family. Not everything has to be like Acolyte kind of dark or even Andor serious. I like the variety.
I mean, the thing is, this works, and so far it's worked really well.
Yeah.
And like you say, hopefully we'll get to episode 8. It'll be its own thing. That's it.
Yeah.
And they'll then maybe take a chance on something else. And that, whereas instead of just going, right, okay, well, they like lightsabers, so let's give them, Acolyte was a great idea. It didn't quite work, but at least they tried.
Agreed.
This, again, they've tried something different and that. So going forward, hopefully there'll be more of them things of like, do you know what, I've got an idea, it's from a comic or a book or something like that. We'll just take this and we'll kind of run with it. I still am very much like with the Marvel and the DC films and things like that. There are so many talented writers out there, like Charles Soule, and who get it. So get them on board, get them writing. They understand Star Wars, they understand Doctor Who or Marvel or whatever it is, and that because that's kind of part of their livelihood of them writing it. That it has to be good so that they can sell the books. Get them on board because they have a good understanding. Jon Favreau, one of the reasons why some of the Marvel films are so good because he gets it.
Yeah.
And that. So they should get them on board more because, you wouldn't, I think if you have one of those writers, Acolyte's not as bad as what it is. Because they would just go, even if someone else writes it and then you just go back to one of these people who right, okay, well, they know a lot about High Republic, so can you just look over the script and tell us, does it work? And they go, that does, but that doesn't. Just be more involved, but, get them involved in that because they know what they're doing, or they seem to know what they're doing anyway.
I agree, almost like an executive editor kind of thing. Yeah. I would love that, if Charles Soule, if he just tweaked the Acolyte script, I think it could have been phenomenal. But we'll wrap up around here. So is there anything else about Acolyte, the episode? Can't say I remember no at Attin. How, anything else you want to say about that before we wrap up?
Yes. Yes. There was one other thing. We kind of got mentioned Knights of the Old Republic. Now he starts mentioning about, are they asleep like the Knights of the Old Republic, and then it gets cut off. Now, because your first thought is that like a Sleeping Beauty thing, but then I'm thinking Knights of the Old Republic. There's obviously the game of the Knights of the Old Republic with Revan. I can't remember. Is there a thing like there where a planet got put to sleep, maybe, or something like that?
Yeah, I think it might have been Nihilus. He did something like that. I know he absorbed the life at the planet, and I know in some of the old Sith laws there were like life forces being drained. Like there was a great emperor like thousands of years before Palps or anything, and he would like drain the life force from people en masse.
It's one of which there actually were. Is that kind of like what we've just covered it, or we're just covering it? It depends where you are. With the when the Queen and they're trying to pull the force power out the Jar
the
Jar
Jar Jar
Binks.
Binks Mace Windu thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's not unlike that, to be honest. It's a lot of that kind of life forcey drain. You suck the life out and it just leaves like husks, and that's quite a common thing in the canon and in Legends. The further back you go, there just seems to be a lot of force energy sucking out beings or objects.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, probably in the future of where we are now, but there's a mention of the fact of Siths sacrificing Jedis.
Yeah, in the episode we just recorded, it was the room that Yoda goes in season 6, and it's like, this Sith temple in the Sith temple, this chamber was used from sacrificing Jedis in Sith rituals, and like, this is a kids show. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but it was just nice the fact they mentioned the Knights of the Old Republic, and you kind of think, oh, there's something there. Maybe someone might hear that and think, oh, what is that? And maybe again, further down the line, we may get something like, with Revan or even, Bane. Who knows? Maybe that's something they may try to tackle.
I'm certain that they're going to tackle that. I'm really torn with Bane because the Bane books...
Not lots known about him, though, is it? That's the thing.
In canon, there's basically nothing. In that Yoda episode, that's pretty much all there is, apart from like the odd other line here and there. You get like the odd book where Palpatine's in it and he'll like say one line about Bane. So there's not a lot in canon. In Legends, there are the you can't see them because they're hidden behind the Star Wars comics, but there's the 3 Bane Legends books, which I stand by, 3 of the best Star Wars books ever written. But I'm torn because I'm like, I'd love a series, but I don't want the series to get cancelled, and I don't want to have to keep waiting for stuff. I almost just want like a 3-hour movie. I think a 3-hour movie would probably encapsulate the Bane stuff enough, or a Bane trilogy, or even two-parter. Like I think that you could probably do the Bane story in 2 films. I would love that, but I just don't think that they're willing to invest that kind of money.
Is it marketable for people who don't know it?
That's the problem with Bane. He's not. He's very dark.
Wait, I forgot. I had it written down. I forgot to mention it in the episode. Do you know who voiced Bane?
Oh,
no, it wasn't Tom Holland, Hardy either.
No, no, I didn't know. I was going to look it up on Clone Wars.
You should know. He's quite big in Star Wars.
Was it Sam Witwer?
Nope. Another massive person in Star Wars.
Mark Hamill?
Yes.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, they got him in. I mean, he only says a very small amount, but yes, he voiced Bane.
That's incredible.
That's quite an interesting thing, maybe does the Skywalker,
the lineage go all the way back. Oh man, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I like the Old Republic references, and I like them being subtle, but I'm certain Disney are going to go back there. It's like the most sought after thing, but I think they're just kind of taking their time to kind of go back, and they're doing the Dawn of the Jedi Order kind of thing, 25,000 years prior. So I'm excited about that, and then they're just kind of sandwiching in, because I think they're very careful about that, because the Old Republic time period, I think, is the most precious period to all fans of like Legends and things like that we haven't seen yet. And because of Revan and Bane and Malak, and it's like there's other ones that are like Immortal, whose name escapes me, and other thing like that. Some of the Sith Jedi stuff, there's a lot to it, and I think they really need to be careful how they build it, because they want it to all kind of fit together.
Maybe one of the big things is with Thrawn, see how Thrawn, because they're going to do a movie or they're going to do something more with him. So maybe that's the thing of see how he lands with a character that, if you know Star Wars, you know who he is. If you just, someone who's just seen some of the films and that, they're not aware of who he is. Does he hit with an audience where they think, right, okay, then we can go back to these other characters that, are massive in lore? Or is he just another one of these and people go, well, he's no Darth Vader?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's interesting. It's interesting of where Star Wars will go. But I'll still be watching. I'll still be going, and in between the times I will be watching the live action shows like Skeleton Crew, myself, Dave and Maff are going to be doing lots of Star Wars rewatching. We've finished season 6 of the Clone Wars. We've finished recording that. I think release wise, I think I'm just releasing those for the next couple of weeks, wherever you're listening to this, or on Genuine Chit-Chat. And then after that, we're gonna watch Revenge of the Sith, which we're very excited to rewatch that. We're gonna do a bit of Tales of stuff, and then I think we're gonna kind of flit around a little bit. I think maybe we could do the Vader comic, we'll do some of the original films, and then we'll eventually swoop back to the Bad Batch. And then after that, the world is our oyster. So if you want more discussion shows and people like content and things like that, as you lovely listeners, if you want more people talking about this kind of thing, me, Maff, and also Dave talking about these things, please check out Clone Wars Conversations wherever you're listening, subscribe wherever you're listening, and you get to hear a lot more from me, Maff, and Dave talk Star Wars. So is there anything else you want to mention, Maff? And also, like, I'll put the details in the description of, like, back to the filmography and the recent Spider-Dan appearance, 20th Century Geek. Is there anything else that you've been up to, or any last words you want to say?
No, that's it. Just there's a possible review.
Perfect. Well, friends, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I appreciate you. Follow, share, subscribe, like, all that usual jazz. Comment below. Tell us all that great stuff. And follow us on social media. Look for all the links in the description for all the other great stuff. And then I'll figure out what I do next week, because the episode's coming out on Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, however you celebrate this time of year. I hope you have a wonderful time. And yeah, we'll see what happens next week. As to maybe Megan and I will just record a little episode. Maybe I'll have to save it. We shall see. But friends, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, thank you, of course, to Maff for joining me for the second time this week for a Star Wars conversation. And of course, my friends, may the Force be with you.
And with you.
You have just experienced host, creator, everything elser of Genuine Chit-Chat, and also the host and creator of Star Wars comics and canon, found on the Comics in Motion podcast, Mike Burton.